Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
How can you find balance in life? Throughout your entire life, from the day you're born to the day you die, you are always tackled with finding the right balance. A balance that you can then apply to every aspect of it. But just like Spongebob and Squidward struggle with finding it for themselves, so will most of us have the same problem in achieving it as well. We could be talking about money, school, food, work, and whatever else. In every single case, finding the right balance between having too much or too little of it is going to be an impossible task. But once you realize its impossibility, you cannot give up, because as impossible as it may seem, it can be achieved. But then again, most of it also depends on your perspective of the task. Maybe you can try using optimism and ignoring the actual problem like SpongeBob would, but this will only lead to you being caught off guard when the problem has become too big to ignore any further. Well, then maybe try using pessimism and accept the problem for what it is like Squidward would. But then you only find yourself in a position of complete self-doubt, a position in which your pessimism will crush your belief in managing the problem. As you can see, in life you need to find the right balance for yourself everywhere. And quite poetically as well, the task of finding the right balance will require balance in itself. Because optimism will destroy you from without, and pessimism will do it from within. Finding the right balance is key.
You think that we should go that way?
Yep.
Well, then I'm going this way.
Huh? Squid, wait!
Most of the best SpongeBob episodes look something like this. A clip of SpongeBob being the naive kid that he is, in contrast to Squidward, a grumpy, old and hopeless adult. It's those episodes that stand out the most. Episodes like Pizza Delivery, Band Gigs, Just One Bite and Idiot Box. And they do so for a reason. SpongeBob and Squidward are complete and polar opposites. One could not be more different than the other. On one side you have a bitter, arrogant and depressed green octopus, and on the other side you are greeted to a happy, joyful and cute yellow sea sponge. They are as different as night and day, and the reason why the before mentioned episodes stand out as some of the best SpongeBob episodes is because they give us two very different perspectives of the same story. A difference that opens us up to both extremes, and in turn leads us to finding the balance of the story somewhere in the middle.
Can't you just get SpongeBob to do it? Great idea! Take him with you. That's not what I had in mind!
A good example of this would be Pizza Delivery. Here, SpongeBob and Squidward are tasked with delivering a Krabby Patty pizza to a customer. But because SpongeBob has not quite figured out how to drive just yet, they get themselves lost and end up in a real conundrum. On one hand, they are both hungry and cannot stand this journey any longer. But on the other hand, SpongeBob will not allow them to eat the pizza because in his eyes, the customer is the one that deserves it. It's one of many moments in their relationship where they are tasked with finding a balance between their two strongly opposing viewpoints. A moment in which you as a viewer are also tasked to ask yourself who you agree with and why. It's a question of recognizing opposing viewpoints and accepting that you might actually be wrong. In this episode, we see this unfold from both sides. Squidward is always complaining about SpongeBob trying to save them with some dumb old pioneer tricks, but by the end, he has to realize that he was wrong and that SpongeBob's naive belief in the pioneers was the only thing able to save them. And on the other hand, we have SpongeBob who throughout the entire episode regards the customer as this holy being who is always right. But by the end, he as well has to realize that he was wrong and that the customers are not always right. But it's not in every episode that the two turn out to be wrong about their initial beliefs. But even in those episodes, they go through a process of self-examination, which in the long run will lead them towards balance. Even if the customer from before had treated SpongeBob fairly and it turned out that he was right, SpongeBob still went through a process of recognizing Squidward's own view. It opened up SpongeBob's mind to a different point of view only by being exposed to it. And this is what makes not only this episode so special, but the entire show as a whole.
This isn't a sculpture. A good sculpture takes more time. You can't just sculpt willy-nilly. You gotta go by the book.
Because SpongeBob and Squidward are so different and believe in so many different things, they will inevitably find balance in life as long as they stick together. And that's because they complete each other. Squidward's pessimism and desire towards a perfect life will only lead to depression, as we can see unfold in the episode Squidville, where Squidward even gets to the point of missing SpongeBob and the chaos the little guy always causes. He needs the sponge to absorb all the negativity that lives within him. And SpongeBob on the other hand, well, if it wasn't for Squidward's constant reminder of reality, SpongeBob would be blinded by his own optimism and at some point get to the cruel realization that he has been living in a made-up fantasy world. They both have very strong viewpoints, but by always being exposed to a different and opposing viewpoint, they challenge themselves to examine their beliefs, and with time, they will find a balance that works for them. It's a lesson that's very important and more relevant today than ever before. With the amount of information out there at the moment, it's very easy to dig yourself into a hole of extreme viewpoints and blind yourself to everything else that is out there, to expose yourself to a belief that might even be harmful to yourself, but you will never find out because you refuse to have a Squidward by your side, someone who is always there to challenge your beliefs. This is how ignorance manifests itself, and ignorance will be the downfall of humanity if it gets out of hand.
SpongeBob, this is the final straw. I am going to move so far away that I will be able to brag about it. I would rather tear out my brainstem, carry it into the middle of the nearest four-way intersection, and skip rope with it than go on living where I do now.
Besides the fact that these two characters can enlighten you to be open to different viewpoints, there is one more lesson that they can teach you about finding balance, and more specific, balance of maturity. A great story is always able to represent its audience during every time of their life, and in very few TV shows is this achieved as good as it is in SpongeBob. If you have ever rewatched some of SpongeBob's best episodes as you have grown older, you might know what I'm talking about. As a kid, SpongeBob was always there to portray your naive and hopeful little mind, a time in which you still believed in boxes filled with adventures and in the goodness people have within them. But as you've grown older, you have started to realize that maybe most dreams you had envisioned for yourself are not going to come true, and that people are way more rotten than what you initially believed. And maybe I'm the first one to tell you this, but if that's the case, well, my friend, you have become a Squidward. You have lost many of your childish beliefs and naive tendencies and replaced them with realistic expectations and a mistrust in goodness. And though this might sound sad, it's this reality that opens you up to a complete new way of watching SpongeBob. As a kid, you were always the SpongeBob of the story, the one that had to be reminded by Squidward to dial down a little and be realistic about your dreams. But as you now rewatch the same episodes, you find yourself in Squidward's shoes. You are now the one that has to be reminded to loosen up a little, to stop complaining about life and to rediscover your passions. SpongeBob and Squidward are a great reminder of the fact that even though we need to eventually grow up, that doesn't mean that we need to give up on all of our childhood traits. Yes, lose up the naivete, but don't give up on your imagination. Find the right balance for your own life, a balance that will allow you to be prepared for the responsibilities of adulthood, but one that still allows wiggle room for imagination and fun. Yes, we all need to grow up, but we don't need to grow bitter in the process.
Yep, this is great. We might as well rename this town Squidward's Paradise. Or perhaps Too Much Paradise.
This entire topic is obviously a humongous task to tackle. I mean, what do I even mean when I'm talking about finding balance? Am I talking about money, love, work, or health? There are too many variables in life to take them all into consideration in one 10-minute video. So I wanted to focus on two main aspects of life that I think SpongeBob and Squidward teach the best. To quickly summarize my points. First, in life we should always strive to achieve refinement. Always strive to improve yourself and get the perfect life for yourself. But we have to also accept that we will never actually get there. But even though perfection is not obtainable, it is a lot easier to get close to it when you surround yourself with someone who completes you. Someone who is always there to challenge your beliefs and to ensure you keep an open mind. Go out there and find someone. It can be a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or a close friend. Someone who completes you. And also make sure to tackle the problem of extremist ideologies. Do not let yourself be absorbed by any extreme ideas. If you don't know who to trust in the news industry, maybe do the same thing I do. Watch the most biased left-leaning news outlet and then watch the most biased right-leaning news outlet on the same story. Somewhere in the middle, where balance can be found, you will be able to find the truth. And the second lesson they teach us is the following. Don't miss out on growing up, but don't forget your childhood either. Many of us, as we grow up, we get overburdened by responsibilities, and with time lose everything that made us special as a child. This will often lead to failing at a problem simply because you lack the imagination to solve it. Life is too short to try and only be a child or an adult. Why not try both at the same time? Try to reconnect to your younger self and find your own balance. Why do we always have to be wrong or right? Having to choose between being an adult or a child? Why not find a balance between the two? Because if you do, the future will look bright. Thanks a lot, guys! Feel free to check out one of my previous videos right here. This channel is all about looking at video games and pop culture from a different perspective, about digging deeper into the meaning of life and how we can get there with video games, movies and TV shows. How we can learn valuable life lessons from them, and every now and then I'll be analyzing them as well. So if that interests you, maybe subscribe? Maybe hit the bell to be notified? What about that, Yeah? Okay, good. See ya!
Have you lost your minds? How could you give up your freedom? I love you, Mother, but I stand for freedom!
No, Gumball, you don't get it!
Sorry, I can't hear you over my freedom! Oh, that's right! Loud it up! Let's all give away our freedom and laugh about it! Everybody careful, I think we're being